So one of the biggest lessons about flow that I've learned from becoming a father is the importance of distraction management. What's up, Joe? Talking about flow and fatherhood.
How's that
Because
working for you?
it's it's challenging. It's very challenging. Because working from home with triplets that don't have words, they just have screams. Screams and cries.
Have you listened to that Oprah episode with the woman who identifies the four sounds any baby makes in any language?
Even in French,
Like their initial sounds, no
even
matter
in Aramaic.
no matter which
I
culture
have
they
seen
come
that.
from, it's like the baby's initial first sounds, they're all the same things, meaning the same thing.
Yeah, I've seen it. Um,
That's pretty wild.
I should go back and rewatch it because I don't remember exactly which ones are which. The nice thing about having triplets and having them be in the NICU for 7 weeks was that they were on a very strict schedule.
Yeah.
So they came home on a very strict schedule. And when they're on a strict schedule, as opposed to other people that don't keep a schedule for their child and do this like feed them whenever they think that they're hungry, or every time they open their mouth, it's like, oh, they're hungry. So they feed them or whatever. It's harder to know what the sounds mean. Like when it's 15 minutes before they feed and they're waking up and they're starting to like fuss and cry, I'm pretty sure they're hungry, right? It's pretty clear. When they've just eaten and it's like 15 minutes and they're still fussing and they're making this different sound, I'm pretty sure that they have some gas. They need to burp, they need to,
Poo.
or poo. Yeah. But I've seen that, clip going around social media all over the place. As you can imagine, my algorithm is pretty baby friendly these days.
Yeah, I saw it a long time ago. It's just not part of my algorithm.
Yeah. But
I I'm just gonna take note, like you've probably thought of this, like how interesting for their first part of life to have this schedule and how that sh is already shaping them.
yeah, I mean,
And you. But
for sure, and back to me really quick.
yeah, okay. Yes, you were talking about the father and the flow.
The flow thing has become a challenge. Biggest, the biggest thing I've learned from fatherhood about flow states is the absolute importance of distraction management and setting boundaries, really. Working from home, I've got, an hour between client calls, and I have important work that needs to get done in order to continue to grow my business. I can't be, number one, distracted by the sounds. So I got earplugs and headphones on top of that, right? To block all that out completely. But I will either shut and lock my door sometimes or put a literal sign on the outside that says, do not enter, like I'm 12 years old again. Or, you have to do something because that time has to be sacred. Because I'll walk out and, it's nothing that anybody's doing wrong, but they're out there and they're having challenges of their own with three babies, especially around feeding time, or if one is really having a hard time and the other two start acting up a little bit. It's like you only have so many hands, so they're going to take help wherever they can get it. So it's like I walk by to get a glass of water and it's like, oh, can you just do this thing really, really quickly? And it's like, yes, of course I can, because I want to help with my child. But that turns into like 10, 15 minutes. And then by the time I get back to my desk, I'm totally out of the zone, right? I have no idea what I was even working on. And so, thinking of flow cycle, I have to start all over again. And it becomes really unproductive and inefficient really quickly. So that's like the biggest challenge that I've found when it comes to flow states and productivity. The biggest benefit when it comes to flow states is just the detachment from the ego.
Hmm.
When you, especially when you're alone with a baby or babies, it's easier. But like I found myself even around other people. I'm like doing baby talk, I'm singing to the babies, I'm acting like a complete buffoon because that baby's not judging me, that baby doesn't care. And it's just like smiling, and it's the most fulfilling thing in the world. And all time and everything goes away. It's like instant flow state when I'm just like staring at that little baby. And it's this, you know, we often talk about like shortcuts to flow or hacks for flow and stacking all these triggers and things. It's really interesting to me how this is just totally baked into our biology when it comes to babies, especially when they're your own. But the really eye-opening thing was like the sooner you detach from the self and from the ego, the quicker you find flow, fulfillment, meaning, enjoyment, happiness, all of it. It really is one of our biggest blockers of flow, is this constantly outward looking, like rumination and self judgment and, you know, egocentric mindset or perspective of the world. And, we could go into a whole spiritual conversation about the ego and its importance and how it protects us and why we build up all these walls and personality traits and masks and whatever else. But the point is like all of that just gets stripped away in a second when you like stare at a baby. And so I find that really fascinating and really cool. And it really, I know what it's for. It's to make up for the times when they're complete psychopaths. It's balance. You got the times of intense joy and meaning and fulfillment and flow, balanced with the intense psychopathy of babies when they're screaming. So found that was interesting. And then what else were we talking about? I said let's talk about me first.
Yeah. Oh, after we're talking about you, then we're talking about the sounds. Joe brought up the sounds that babies make.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I forget. It'll probably come back.
Daddy brain already.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Joe, tell us about the Dolphins.
Dolphins were amazing.
Hey, you're back now?
I'm back in Phoenix, Scottsdale, technically at the moment. Um, the first day was do the dolphin experience that I've done before that anybody can kind of go and participate in. And then after that, it was jumping in the water with the dolphins, doing like energy healing sessions on one another. And so, how active the dolphins were, depending on the individuals that they were kind of helping assist in healing with, was just fun. Like the one guy who went besides me uh, giggles all the time. His nervous system balances. Like when I had him on my HRV device, it was so funny to watch his score spike every time he laughed. And so it was like interesting to notice that he uses that for regulation. But him and I were partnered up the first time, and I mean, he's just constantly giggling about nothing. And before you know it, the dolphins are just shoving us across the lagoon, like taking us for a ride. So just little interactions and stuff like that was just way cool and fun to experience. The peace flag ceremony, where you like swim across and you're holding the peace flag, and the dolphins are just like, what are these humans doing? And they're just swimming right in front of your face the entire time, like going, and it's pretty cool. So I really highly recommend dolphin adventures. The manatees were pretty cool too, being the little vegetarians, just trying to shove food in their mouth. That's all they cared about, was more vegetables. And the sea lion is like a dog in terms of like, okay, I did that trick. Feed me, feed me, feed me, feed me. Okay, I'll do that trick. Feed me, feed me, feed me, feed me. So got to interact with more than just dolphins, which was fun.
Yeah, that sounds super cool.
Did your nervous system feel different when you were with them? Or how did it feel?
Yeah. I got out feeling good. Like my nervous system responded well to it, because we can do the whole assess and reassess. So I was curious of kind of playing with that throughout the time. And they make you really hungry. Like I couldn't believe the amount of carbs that I was eating. And then Jack, who's the science guy, he's told us that their echolocations, just the way they vibrate our cells, that it boosts our metabolism, so we will be more hungry. Like, and this was on day 3 after I had just been pounding potato tacos and mashed potatoes and all the carbs on the buffet. So that was kind of intriguing to hear after I'd already kind of noticed, I can't believe how many carbs I'm eating right now.
Yeah, interesting. Have you guys ever spent much time around horses? Yeah.
First 20 years of life.
Oh yeah. Were you raised by horses?
Well, it was on a farm and we had a horse. Dad had the horse since before I was born, so I started riding him when I was 3.
Nice. Yeah, we grew up around horses. We didn't have horses, but two or three of my mom and like relatives, uncles and aunts and uncles, a bunch of them had horses. So every time we'd go visit, we'd get to ride. And I was always fascinated, even as a young kid, with the connection between horses and humans, because I felt it and I could never explain it. But my uncle, every aunt and uncle that owned horses, that had like relationships with them, they were just like, yep, yeah, you don't have to explain it. We know what you're talking about. We get it. So super fascinating to me how their nervous system interacts with ours in ways that we don't understand, for sure. I think they understand it at a much deeper level than we do.
Very much the same experience, Brandon.
Yeah, I've heard that dolphins is even more, they're a lot more intelligent. I think dolphins are incredible. Do you know who's the guy that was studying dolphins for decades and like taking LSD and swimming with dolphins? You know what I'm talking
Oh,
about?
that was the
Lilly.
NASA experiment, and
Yeah.
I know
His
what you're
name's
talking
John
about.
Lilly or something.
I don't know his name.
Yeah.
The woman decided that she would jerk the dolphin off though, so
Yeah, that's a different
delayed
story, but yes.
same research.
Yes. Yeah, like that one got a little bit out of control. But But it's still interesting, interesting research before that point about how they communicate, how they think, how they are like I can't remember what they call it, but how they don't sleep. They're hemispheric sleepers. Like one half of their
Yeah.
brain sleeps while the other half is still awake and just cruising along with the pod.
Because they're conscious breathers.
Good, good word drop.
I mean, it was interesting when they
Um,
kept saying, referring to them as conscious breathers, and I just kept thinking, like, well, isn't that kind of unconscious? Like, what do you mean? It's like, no, like they literally have to go to the surface of the water to do the breathing, so they're
Mhm.
very conscious breathers.
Always.
Oh, right.
So if their full brain was able to sleep, then they think to breathe.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. They're fascinating animals.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
And
Um,
I saw a thing on Instagram where they were talking about the horse brains and
mhm,
the eyes being on each side of the horse, and then the mixed way between the pathways of their vision and their vestibular systems.
mhm.
And they were saying that that gives the horse their um, like intuitive in their intuition, like how readily they pick up the vibes of somebody and their emotions and stuff like that, is what this reel was kind of giving credit to. And as you were talking about the horses, it remind the dolphins' eyes are on each side of their head too,
Mhm.
and they have ears, but it's like a small dot in the side of their body, like they don't stick out or anything.
Yeah.
Which was I'd never thought of them having ears, and the trainer's like, "This is their ear,"
Hmm.
pointing at a dot smaller than my pinky.
Yeah, well, I mean, they have to have some way of, I guess they could do it many ways, but of picking up that vibration. They gotta have some kind of transmitter, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
To pick up that vibration like a radio tower, right? And a transmitter in a radio. Some way to process that. So I assume that's what it is.
Right now you're making me think about how chickens are like dolphins.
Yeah. Tell
That's
us.
because of no. Oh, I lost my voice. No, I think a lot about what you were saying, Joe, about the eyes being on two sides of the head and the small ears. I'm thinking of chickens and birds and dolphins and whales and
So at a more
they.
primal level, prey animals have eyes on the sides of their heads, and predators have eyes in the front.
Oh, I never thought of it that way.
Yeah. So like cats,
Right.
dogs, which are wolves, any predator is going to have eyes here so they can follow a target, have better depth perception, and so they can chase them down. Whereas prey animals have eyes on the side so they can see more of their environment and see the predators coming.
Right. Like even sheeps and goats.
Yeah, they're just a little bit off to the side.
No, that's interesting in terms of also the rules of kosher laws because in kosher laws it's not you don't eat predators, but no one
Um,
ever there's different rules, but no one ever said anything about the eyes, but that would be something too. I'm just thinking about like what's allowed to eat and what isn't. Um, and it's true, all the animals have eyes on the sides of their head.
yeah, I'm sure there's some exceptions. Like I'm thinking of orcas because they're, mainly predators, but they kind of have eyes on the side.
Okay.
So there's probably some examples of exceptions, but for the most part, that's kind of how predators are built for those reasons.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. But the connection and communication, like intuition, that kind of stuff, that's like so fascinating. I wonder how they can measure that stuff sometimes. I do know of many places in Montana, and I know there's some out here in Arizona too, but Um, I like equine therapy. It's become pretty big in Montana. These dude ranches and stuff that there's one in particular. There was a guy that played in the NFL from Montana. I'm blanking on his name right now, but he had tons of concussions and he was in a really bad place, suicidal and really convinced that he had CTE and all this stuff. And so he had heard about this equine therapy, went and tried it, and it was like magic for him. It really helped with his PTSD. It helped him to regulate his nervous system. And he started getting better. So he founded some kind of nonprofit or something, and uh, they started rescuing horses, like quarter horses and old race horses and old work horses that were, kind of put out to pasture and bringing them all together. And then, he built this like equine therapy place, I think outside of Bozeman, Montana. But they serve like veterans and people that have had intense trauma in their life and, anybody that's got like major head injuries and suffers from PTSD or CTE, which is, of course, not diagnosable, but, anybody that's suffering can come hang out with horses. And it's pretty incredible the results that they see from that kind of stuff. I think especially with men, it's helpful. I think my
Hmm.
theory is that men are more resistant to therapy with a person because of stigmas and whatever else. But with an animal, they don't have to talk. They can just enact with that animal in like a no judgment kind of way. And so I think it helps to kind of open things up. And so that's my theory. I don't know if that's true at all, but
Are you pretty sciencey brained, Brandon? Like, do you like thinking of
mm,
experiments?
no. To be perfectly honest, no, I'm not. I've never, I mean, I do like experiments, but I'm not really diligent about like tracking data. And I know the benefits of it and how much better my results would be in a lot of things if I tracked and tracked and tracked. But it gets tedious to me, so I track the most important things. And the rest of it, I kind of like, I try things. And I work a lot on my own intuition. So I would say, a hardcore science person on this end and like a completely intuitive, empathic, like I got no other word, but woo-woo on this end, if that's the other end of the spectrum.
This is why we get along.
Definitely pretty close to the middle there, and I'll swing each way depending on like context. But I try as much as I can to bring the two together. That's like I think one of my strengths too, is being in both worlds and trying to bridge that gap.
Jack, who does the dolphin science stuff, um, as you were kind of thinking through flow states, and you're like, well, I wonder, I was like, I bet Brandon would really like working with Jack and the science team, but maybe not, but maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I've also never been really exposed intensely to um like hardcore science.
Jack is pretty hardcore science. He's raised with Asperger's. So when he was 12 years old, he had been adopted by a Jewish family in Miami, and he was in open heart surgeries at the age
Hmm.
of 12.
What?
And because they told him sending him to the camp for summer again was just a waste of their money and his time, because
Hmm.
anything that wasn't science, he just didn't remember it. Like, if reading for joy, there was no reading for joy, but reading scientific articles, that was his joy.
Yeah.
and he would remember it all.
Yeah.
So
I have a friend like that.
he's come
But
up with a
his
lot
science
of
is football. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, he's come up with a lot of different you know, ways to see what are the dolphins seeing, for example, when they're echolocating. So they
Mm,
put different shapes in the water and then record the sounds and then put the sounds on like the seismograph. So the sand would all vibrate and show the, what the picture was that the dolphins were being able to see.
mm-hmm.
Um, he just gets in. So it's interesting thinking of the brain flow states and their frequencies with their echolocation type things. Pretty fascinating.
Yeah. Um, I mean, just sound and frequency in general, I think is really fascinating, especially around flow states and the idea of coherence and like heart-brain coherence on an individual level. And then this idea that when we're around others, we tend to um, find an in-phase coherence with the people around us. It's the idea of misery loves company, right? On the one end, and also when you're around people that are joyful and optimistic and stuff, they tend to raise your vibration, right?
You kind of explained why so many people were just talking about having this massive heart opening.
Yeah.
They're all energy healers, so they're all like, my heart is just so open. I can't believe how much my heart opened. Just the
Mm.
words
Yeah.
just kept coming out. My heart is open,
Yeah.
and that would
And
align the
and Joe
coherence.
is like, my gut is open. Give me more mashed potato.
Mashed potato.
No,
Uh,
and I'm like, that's what also ritual helps create. It creates a container for
exactly.
that, right? It gives you,
Yep.
you need the container for that to happen. Um,
Yep.
and that's why it's transformative. Yeah.
Exactly right.
All right.
Which is,
But I want to bookmark something because I'm curious, maybe not today or for, I was going to write to you for Thursday. I'm curious about brainwaves, and I know
yeah.
almost nothing about that. So,
Okay.
but I've started hearing people talking about listening to music, and that's just something that's been in the back of my mind for a while. So it sounds like it's relates to what you're talking about now.
It's exactly. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly right. Yeah, it's an interesting science. Um, Lori. Lori Binder. No. Joe, what the heck is Lori's last name?
Palmer.
Lori Palmer. She was an M1. She's a like ultra endurance athlete. She wrote a book. I haven't heard if it came out yet, but it's all about the heart. And um,
She's ridiculously empathetic.
she is very much so. But anyway, she is like a master instructor or something with the Heart Math Institute,
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
which kind of their whole mission is, raising the vibration of the human species through like this heart-brain coherence training. And
She's ridiculously smart and scientific too.
she is, yes. Yeah. Her book is filled with lots of research. She's been working on it for a long time.
That's cool.
But um anyway, it's all kind of based around this idea of we are all energy. Energy is waves and vibration, and we can attune ourselves to other vibrations, whether those be people or information in the quantum field. And that's what manifesting is. That's what prayer is, you know, at a scientific or quantum
Hmm.
understanding. And that's what flow states are as well. You're helping your brain find this like perfect um, rhythm or kind of brainwave state that is optimal for efficiency and um, and performance. I mean, really quickly, we have basically 5 brainwave states based on how fast they oscillate. The slower ones are deep sleep, the slowest being delta, which is like less than 4 hertz, which is very slow. Your bone conduction headphones go at like 100 hertz, up to 500 hertz, right? To activate your vestibular system. Music um, is usually around, anywhere from 390. I mean, I think the heart vibrates at 392 hertz.
Mm.
That's the frequency of vibration. And so you'll see like sound healers, they attune to these different frequencies, and that's what they're using to, affect different organs of the body or, brainwave states in some of these cases. But you can like heart opening type, heart chakra type music is usually tuned at 392 hertz. Um, Most popular music is around 440 hertz because that's just what classical music at some point decided was the best sound. Doesn't actually make too much of a difference. But anyway, there are different frequencies of sound that have different effects on different areas of the body, things like that. But our brain waves are generally much slower. So delta is like sleep. Theta is the next one up. And that's like sleep, meditative state, dream state. Um, like when they do research on, Tibetan monks that are deep in meditation and are able to melt the snow around them or light themselves on fire and not get burned. They're deep in a theta brainwave state, and they're actually able to change their physiology in that state, which is really fascinating. The next one up is alpha, and we're getting up to like 8 to 12 hertz here. And this is like daydreaming, kind of in between normal consciousness and deep meditation. It's kind of like the bridge between
Oh.
those. The hypnagogic state is kind of alpha brainwaves, like right before sleep or coming out of sleep. This is like very relaxed. Um, then right above that is beta. And beta ranges from like 12 to I think up to like 30 hertz. Low beta is just our normal waking consciousness. Where we're at right now is basically like low beta. Frontal lobe's active, um, doing some rumination when we're not on a task, right? Just normal waking consciousness. As it gets higher and higher and higher, your thoughts start racing. We started getting into more stressful state. Anxiety lives up at the top of the beta brainwave state.
Mm.
So remember it's good to remember that it all works in multiples or harmonics, right? So I don't remember the math, but um, binaural beats music, it's tuned to, I don't remember exactly, but um, some multiple of like 12, I think, which would be the alpha brainwave state. Flow
Mm.
sits at the border of alpha and theta. So like 8 to 10 hertz, where you come out of beta after the struggle phase and you calm way down, but you're alert, right? It's like this calm, cool, and collected focus. So that border of alpha and theta, if you take that, if we just said it was 12, maybe it's probably more like 8, but so there's some multiple of that, like 396 or something, where binaural beats would play. And because of the harmonic, because it's in phase with that 8 hertz wave,
Hmm.
it can help you bring that beta wave down to that alpha theta level. Just like when you play music and you play a note, a high C with the low C, they just sound so nice. And they actually like, even if they're a little bit out of tune, they'll kind of find themselves back in tune if you play them together. Um, so that's kind of the basics of brainwave states and how they work with flow and music, why music is so helpful if you pick the right music. Um, yeah, what I was gonna say. Oh, and then each organ has its own um, frequency, right? Which is the sound healing thing we just talked about, but you can actually bring them into coherence. And the most important one is your brain and your heart. And if they get out of phase, then we end up like all in our head
Mhm.
or completely out of our mind and just going on feeling all the time. Neither of which is really the best way, right? The best way is to have both of them working together to have coherence between the heart and the brain. And the Heart Math Institute, like their number one tool for getting heart-brain coherence is breathing.
Mm.
Yeah. And we talked about this a little bit within ritual, like the rosary in the Catholic tradition is perfectly set up with the rhythm and the meter of the words and the sentences. Hail Mary, Mother of God. That's all I know. To
Pray for us
essentially,
sinners.
to what?
Pray for us sinners.
Yes. So like that first sentence is like if you timed it, it's basically like a 5 to 6 second exhale, right? And then it creates this rhythm that fosters this heart-brain coherence. And then when you add a whole bunch of other people doing the same thing, then we all get on the same wavelength. And that fosters this group flow, or what they sometimes call in ecstatic circles, like collective effervescence. You ever heard that term?
Mhm.
Yeah. So concerts also are incredible for creating this atmosphere of collective effervescence. Ever been to a big concert? Everybody knows every word and they're all singing together. It's incredible. Like it's a great feeling. Sports can do this too, especially at those high, intense moments. That's why I don't care what the sport is. If it's a championship or a really important match or game, I'll watch it. I don't care what it is because I like the competition. I like people pushing themselves to their utmost maximum level and reaching for that next level of performance, that flow state. Because watching someone get into it will help you find it as well.
That answers why so many people will watch the long game, even if a lot of it's not interesting, for
Yeah,
those moments.
it can be one moment
Yeah.
of 3 seconds. Like football, it's a 3 second play, and you only need one of them to make the whole 3 hour game worth it. Golf is a great example. One shot, you could waste 4.5 hours out on that golf course, and they're all terrible. But one shot where it just feels perfect, it lands exactly where you thought, and it's like that's why we play the game. It's not why I play the game, but those moments aren't great. I don't even play the game. What am I talking
Yeah.
about?
All
So
right. Well, thank you. That gives me a little better sense of things. Now, why aren't they named in alphabetical order?
I don't know. It's a good question.
Someone named them at some point. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. I have no idea why they're named that way. Oh, we forgot one though. Gamma.
I was just thinking, I was like,
I don't know.
Yeah, gamma is like really fast and high. Like everything above 30 hertz, going up to like 100 hertz and more. These are they're very fast and quick, and they're gone in an instant. They're not really like solid
Hmm.
and continuous. And they can happen in any brainwave state. Like there are these little shots of gamma. They don't often happen in beta. They happen more often in theta, delta, and then and alpha a little bit. So at the lower brainwave states, especially in flow, when you're right around that border or in deep meditation, you can have these, they're basically like what's happening with a gamma brainwave is it's shooting from like one side of the brain all the way to the other. And it's making like far-flung connections between neurons. So these are like your strokes of insight or like creativity. So we kind of, it can also happen in alpha. So like when we're in daydream mode, this is the kind of what the breakout principle book is based upon. And it's the release phase of the flow cycle. After you're in struggle, you're in that beta, trying to like hold everything in your mind, and then you let it go. You go for a walk, go take a shower, go move your body, go do some breath work. And then you have this like spark of insight. And it's because you've let it go, your brainwaves start to slow down. And then you just get these like big like
Hmm.
spikes of gamma that make these connections. And then it's like, whoa, that's the answer. And then you go back and you're in that alpha theta right in flow. So that's why the flow cycle and the creativity cycle sit like right on top of each other. It's basically the same thing. And it's because we have to get out of this like tunnel vision, this convergent thinking, and let the default mode network, the divergent thinking, the lateral type thinking go to work to find the answers that we're looking for.
So because you've studied flow so much, when you're in it, do you observe yourself in it, or is that part of you just gone and you afterwards you notice it? What's the
Um,
experience for you?
yeah, good question because some people they don't want to know about it. I've run
Yeah.
across that before. It's like I don't want to know because if I know, then I'm going to pull myself out of it because I'm aware of it. And that's a valid concern, but it's not. It doesn't really work that way. Like I'll know I'm in flow, and that just honestly it amps me up even more. I'm like, yes. And so I'll just have even more fun. So
Mm.
but there is quite often where I don't realize I'm in flow until afterward,
Yeah.
until I start to come out of it. And I'm like, whoa, what time is it? Like, what is going on? Where am I? And I'm like, dang, that was a nice little flow state there. And then I take a break. And hopefully I can take a quick break, come back and jump right back into it, depending on what I'm doing. But
As long as you don't have too many distractions.
exactly. Yes, that's key.
Yeah.
But it's, like it's interesting, like mystical experiences, psychedelic experiences, and like mystical experiences and like macro flow states are essentially the same thing. In the brain, they're the same thing. Everybody's subjective experience might be different based on whatever their conditioning, their upbringing, what they believe, all of that. Um, but in the brain, it's essentially the same thing. Psychedelic experiences are different in some ways, but they're also very similar in a lot of ways. And the ways that they are all so similar are in, you know, the loss of self, the the time dilation, and the richness of experience. Um, when you're in those experiences, some people have these moments of clarity where they have almost like an out-of-body experience, looking down on themselves, and they know
Yeah.
exactly what's going on. They know exactly where they are. They know exactly what is happening to them. They're still a little bit outside of time, but they have these like little moments of clarity, and then they're kind of back in the experience. I don't know if you guys have ever experienced anything like that. I've experienced it more with psychedelics and just like high level flow states in sports. Um, but anyway, those moments of clarity are, they take you out of it for a moment, but then you're right back into it. So it doesn't detract from the experience at all. I think it actually gives it more
Yeah.
power and more perspective. So I think it's helpful. And I think that happens for a reason. Maybe it's just that perspective. I don't know, but I don't think I notice it anymore. Well, I definitely notice it more in the sense that I'm aware of what's happening to me because I'm aware that I'm in a flow state. In the past, I'm just like, this is awesome. I'm having the greatest time of my life. I want this to last forever. So then I go get super drunk because I think that that like keeps the flow state going. So
Ah,
I don't do that anymore. But you can see how substance abuse and addiction um, can be a real danger for someone that is attuned to flow and a flow seeker.
sure.
Yeah, because they're seeking flow, and if they're not aware of what's going on or aware of the state, and they're just aware of the feeling, and they're going to seek, it's sensation seeking, really, is what it is. But um, that's kind of the one of the dangers
It's
of a
probably the
high
biggest
flow
danger of
lifestyle.
cannabis.
Yeah, I mean, cannabis is a shortcut to flow. I mean, people all over the world use cannabis for creativity, right? And it does make you more creative because it helps you find flow. Anandamide is called the bliss molecule. It's only released during exercise and flow states. THC is exactly the same molecule.
Hmm.
Like, well, I don't know if it's technically exactly chemically the same molecule, but it attaches to the anandamide receptor site. And we have this in our endocannabinoid
Hmm.
system everywhere. So THC whoosh, goes right there. We feel bliss, and it
Or,
helps us
or
find.
C or CBD too, for that matter, right?
Yeah, no.
No?
It just has to be THC.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that.
CBD is not. I don't think it attaches to the anandamide receptor site. I think those are different receptor sites.
What about CBG?
I'm not sure about CBG or CBN, but I don't think they do this. They're definitely not the same as THC. I don't know how they interact with anandamide receptor sites and how they would affect flow states. But again, any of these substances, psychedelics are the most interesting to me. because of their lack of addiction quality and their closeness to the characteristics of flow states. But even they have their drawbacks. They have obvious drawbacks, being that they're illegal. But the kind of the physical might not be the right word, but it's not the same exact characteristics. If you lined up all of the different characteristics of a flow state and a psychedelic state, a lot of them are very similar in like the loss of self, the richness of the experience, the timelessness, but the nervous system itself reacts a little bit differently. And so in a psychedelic state, you can feel they're a lot more sympathetically driven, whereas a flow state is actually more
Mhm.
parasympathetic. So that's
And are the long-term effects different, or that's yet
um,
to be determined?
it's yet to be determined. There's no longitudinal studies that I know of.
Yeah.
But as far as, I mean, so the danger with psychedelics is especially if you have pre-existing conditions and a propensity towards mental health issues. Like if you have schizophrenia in your family history, you do not get to do cannabis and psychedelics as a general rule because you can have a psychotic break if you already have mental health problems. You should just, be very, very careful with that stuff and work with a medical professional if you can. Like, obviously, it's really hard to do right now because they're Schedule One drugs still, but there are some clinics that are kind of opening up, and there are ways to work with people with these substances. But at the end of the day, it's better
Ketamine.
if you, what's that?
Ketamine's one of the substances that you can go work with people
Yeah,
professionally.
yeah. Ketamine is. Ketamine's interesting. It's more of a dissociative, and at super high doses, yes, you can get psychedelic effect, but it's not quite the same. But they have seen pretty good results with like alcoholism and depression, like chronic major depressive disorder with some ketamine treatments. So it's a tool. All psychedelics are just tools. I still believe that, while they can be powerful tools and really good perspective shifts, um, it does not substitute for the work of mindset work for sure, neuro hygiene, double for sure. But for finding flow states naturally in your life, like that's to me the ultimate healing power. You have this innate biological superpower in the greatest pharmacy known to man, which is your brain, right? All of these substances do nothing more than act on the innate biology of your brain and tweak it in different ways. But if you can find like an activity that gives you good, consistent access to flow states, you can rewire your brain in maybe not quite as fast as like a ayahuasca trip, but in a much safer and um what's the word I'm looking for? More productive way, you know, without the dangers, without having to fly to Peru and puke your guts out for 3 days.
You can just go to a church here in the United States.
Church in the United States. Point me. I actually got offered to go do a ceremony recently, but my spiritual mentor told me no. He's like, nope, you're not doing that yet. I'm like, all
What a
right.
dick.
I mean, I couldn't to
So,
lead a ceremony, or you mean,
no, no, no.
oh,
I'm involved in a group here in Phoenix called the Church of the Eagle and the Condor, and they're a plant-based medicine kind of group.
Ah, okay.
But they do
Yeah.
a lot of rituals. They bring in their leader, kind of Joe Tafur is the guy that kind of started the church, and he's a huge ayahuasca proponent. He's a medical doctor here in the United States. He lives in, I think, in Scottsdale or Phoenix. Um, he's written some books on it. He's a big proponent. But him and this other guy, they've studied with the Shipibo down in Peru and the Amazon, and they bring shamans up here to do these ceremonies. My spiritual guide, he's a medium and um, not a channeler, but he's a medium and he's so really quick story, and then I'll let you guys go. When we moved into this house, I had him do a land, I had him, check out the land and do a healing for the land, healing ceremony. Because a lot of land around this area of Phoenix is native land, and there are spirits here, and there are burial grounds that us white folks just built right on top of. And so this land has a lot of history, and there sometimes are some leftover things going on. So essentially, he's like, your land is an energy vortex in the wrong direction, and it's like sucking energy down. So we need to heal this land. And so he did a ceremony. He healed it. Energy is now flowing upward, and it's all great and prosperous. In that ceremony, there was an elder of the Hopi Indian tribe, which is north of Flagstaff. That's where their reservation is. But came to him, and I had been working with this guy for a couple years and trying to find someone that could help me with what he calls a curse that I picked up somewhere in my life or in a past life. So I've worked with a shaman, a Mongolian shaman, for a full day. We did 3 big ceremonies to try to deal with this, and it apparently didn't work. Didn't happen. Even though the ceremonies were incredible. Like, that's a story I'll tell you guys sometime, but didn't work. So he's like, you need to, this Hopi elder spirit came to me when I was working with this land, and he told me that he knows about you, and you need to contact the Hopi tribe and do a ceremony with some of their elders. So I'm like, okay, where do I find some Hopi elders? And that's where it's been left, and it's been months, and I haven't been able to. I
I
haven't.
got you, bro.
You what?
I got you.
Do you
So
know Hopis?
remember that Jewish kid I was talking about?
Um, Jack's
Dolphin?
the
So
dolphin.
Jack went to some sites in Miami
Mm-hmm.
and did his own excavating. And because he approached from the water side, there was no signs telling him to stay out.
Uh-huh.
And he got 2 skulls.
Oh.
And he had these skulls for years. He wasn't doing anything with them. He was like, they chatter, but it doesn't mean shit to me. I don't understand what they're saying. Nothing. And through the grapevine, the elders found out that he had, and I believe it was the guy, could have my stories mixed up, but I believe it was the guy who the book's Don Juan are written after.
Don Miguel Ruiz.
Yeah, like the actual guy though, not that character name.
Oh, yeah, he was the author, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah, like the actual elder that the books are written about. He said, I want those, and he wanted Jack to go to a pueblo, and Jack's like, no, you can come to my house and I'll give them to you, but I'm not going to a pueblo, like way too much dark magic, not dealing with it. And they came to his house and he gave them to him, and then at some point in time, the elders just kind of kept calling on him because he had a animal sanctuary, and he would give them their feathers because he was just supposed to burn it all.
Mm.
But for the natives, this is gold.
Yeah.
Right.
Very safe.
So for years he kind of was a supplier for their ceremonies and stuff on many levels. And so when he found himself in Santa Fe, he's got like 20 piece pipes. He went through a decade or so, maybe 8 years at least, of like training. So he knows a bunch of the Hopi, he knows a bunch of the Navajo, although he calls the Navajo something else because he says the Navajo is derogatory to call them Navajo. So I forget what he called them, but he called them something else. But yeah, he's well connected through the Santa Fe area of New Mexico, and then I can't imagine how far that extends here in the desert.
Yeah, that's where I went and met this Mongolian shaman. He's half Mongolian. That's where he learned from his great grandfather, but he was half I think what's the tribe out in Santa Fe? It's Truth or Consequences is where I met him. But anyway, if you would reach out to him and just ask him, do you have any connections in the Hopi tribe?
Yeah,
Because it's
definitely.
need to apparently I still got this curse on me, so I need to take care of it.
Yeah, let's take care of that.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Take care of that.
Yeah. I'll tell you guys about the experience I had with the shaman in Truth or Consequences because it was powerful. Even though apparently it didn't take care of things, like there were some things that happened that were pretty interesting.
We did we were part of, randomly, it wasn't part of the trip, but we ended up being part of a cacao ceremony. A Mayan sound cacao ceremony, and that was awesome, like ridiculously powerful. And then the other thing I was thinking of is the brainwaves that you were discussing. I've got the neural check that's was created by some Russians for BrainTap, that do the brainwave frequency stuff. We should hook you up. I'd love for you to take a look at that because I like to use it because it looks at people's autonomic nervous system, so then I can see, like, are they benefiting or are they not? Like, where were they? Where are they now?
Yeah.
And the BrainTap guy always says that the delta waves, if someone's real high in delta waves, that it's a signal for inflammation.
Oh, when they're like awake and not
like in their awake state, if they have 60 to 80% delta, he's like, they've got a lot of brain inflammation going on.
Interesting.
And then Patrick Porter, who's the speaker for BrainTap, it was his dad who created BrainTap. I was doing the neuro check at a conference, and he came by and he was like, your gamma's at 30%. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah, so it's interesting to see my theta and my gamma depending on the time of day when I use it and how it changes and stuff. It's interesting, cool feedback. So you'd like it. We got to get together.
Yeah, let's do it. Let me know what you find out about the Hopis.
Yeah, I'll message you later today.
Okay. Thank you guys for being here. This was fun. Good.
Thanks for sharing.
What's that?
Thanks for sharing into realms like
of course,
that are outside some of my circles of conversation. So I love that.
They're so close to the stuff that you're really interested in, though. Like light and sound.
Yeah, that's what I'm sensing. Yeah.
All waves. Yeah, so it's really interesting. Anyway, until next time, thank you guys.
Okay. Have a good undistracted time.
Thank you.
At least some of the time. Okay. Bye. Bye, Joe.
See you later.